Hello BookTube, this is Breckie from Breckie Writes, this is Breckie Reads, and this is my spoiler-free book review of Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. Burial Rites is the true story of Agnes Magnusdóttir, the last woman to be executed in Iceland in the 1820s. Agnes is charged with helping to murder two men, one of whom was her employer, and as she awaits her execution, she is sent to live with a family in rural Iceland and work on their farm as a way of sort of earning her keep up until her execution time arrives. This novel explores Agnes and her perspective as she's essentially facing her death and as she tells her story and tries to help people understand the circumstances that led to the crime that she committed. This is very much a story about human relationships and the ways that we other those who have committed crimes without always knowing why and how the crimes were committed. The first thing to say about Burial Rites is that the language in this novel is extraordinary. Hannah Kent is very young and this is her debut novel, and if this is where she's starting, I am very excited about all the books she'll be releasing over the course of her career because this is one of the most beautiful books I've read in a very long time. Yeah, as you can see, there are a lot of tabs. I don't tab for specific things, I generally tab for phrases or passages that seem to really capture something beautiful, something I want to revisit and reflect upon, and there was a bunch of that in Burial Rites. Burial Rites is told in a shifting set of point of views. We get first-person point of view from Agnes. We're inside her head, in her thoughts, in her memories, but we're also given third-person limited point of views from several different people that Agnes interacts with, including Toti, the priest that she has that's coming to hear her confession, to sort of walk with her during her last weeks, and the family with whom Agnes is sent to live. Of course, at first the family definitely does not want Agnes around. In this particular period in Iceland, families that are on farms lived in crofts, and these crofts had what's called a bedstofa. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that properly, but essentially it's like one room where all the beds are in order to conserve heat in winter, and the family definitely does not want to share a bedroom with a convicted murderer. And so this kind of tension, this fear about Agnes is a huge part of the perspective shift, but we also get to see Agnes. Agnes's perspective moves from being really fuzzy and clearly unhinged to being a little bit more lucid to being unhinged again as the story continues, and that is an interesting way that this story is woven together. Some of the most beautiful description and just some of the best writing overall comes from the moments in which Agnes is kind of unraveling as she's facing what she's done and what lays before her. I thought that this was just an incredible read. This is the kind of book that I want to savor because I want to sit in the language, I want to reread passages. If you look at the pages where I've marked, I just underlined tons and tons of stuff because everything in here it's talking about human relationships and human frailty and the complex reasons people commit crimes, and not that they necessarily are justifiable, but just that people rarely commit crimes for the sake of a crime. There's so much going on, and what it means to be poor, what it means to be a woman when you have very little upward mobility, what it means to face death, and to face death as a relatively young woman. Agnes is actually only about 32 or 33 at the time of this, and I'm 30, so that's like a really scary thing that she was in my age range. This is also a book about faith in a lot of ways, and how do you have faith in God when something like this is happening, and what that all looks like. I would not say this is a religious book. It's certainly not the main focus, but it does play a part, and I appreciate that because faith would have been hugely important in the 1820s in Iceland. Really, part of the reason you read Burial Rites is to just soak in Hannah Kent's beautiful, beautiful language. Let me read you a passage that kind of exemplifies this. This is all from Agnes's perspective. I do not crumble. I think of the small things. I concentrate my mind on the feeling of linen next to my skin. I breathe in as deeply and as silently as I am able. Now comes the darkening sky and a cold wind that passes right through you, as though you are not there. It passes through you as though it does not care whether or not you are alive or dead, for you will be gone and the wind will still be there, licking the grass flat upon the ground, not caring whether the soil is at a freeze or a thaw, for it will freeze and thaw again. And soon your bones, now hot with blood and thick juicy with marrow, will be dry and brittle, and flake and freeze and thaw with the weight of the dirt upon you. And the last moisture of your body will be drawn up to the surface by the grass, and the wind will come and knock it down and push you back against the rocks, or it will scrape you up under its nails and take you out to sea in a wild screaming of snow. And a wild screaming of snow. Isn't that incredible? This book is full of that almost prose poetry that dots this through Agnes's perspective and as she sort of moves in and out of lucidity. And I just think that this is one of the best books I've read. The language in here is incredible. It reminds me a little bit of Their Eyes Were Watching God, although the context is completely different. I just think that this is one of the most beautiful books. If you are hesitant because you don't read literary fiction, I think that this is an accessible book to kind of get you started. It doesn't move super quickly. It's got a pretty slow pace, but a consistent pace, and I found it beautiful. If I was going to give any drawbacks to Burial Rites, it's that the shifting point of view can be a little bit challenging. You move almost seamlessly from a third-person perspective into Agnes's first-person perspective, and then back out into another character's third-person perspective, and that can be a little bit challenging. Aside from that, however, I think Burial Rites is one of the most beautiful books I have read in a long time. I think that the character of Toti is beautifully imagined, and he is very human. This is the priest that comes to minister to Agnes. I think that the family concerns are rich and real, and I think that as you learn about the crime and how Agnes found herself in the place where she was helping to commit murders, that you get to see so much humanity, and that there is so much there that is probably unsaid. One of the things that I also admire is that Hannah Kent lived for a year in Iceland, and she was saying that as she was researching this, she was taking a lot of statements from people who were describing the men who were murdered and taking that into consideration in a way that probably isn't normally done when this story is told. It's a very famous murder case in Iceland, apparently. I've never heard of this, but I don't think many people in North America have, but I am now really intrigued to know a little bit more. I have to say, this does create a more sympathetic understanding of why someone would commit a crime. It certainly doesn't justify it, but it definitely opens the conversation about what is the role of capital punishment, and what is the role of human relationships, and what does it mean to be redeemed, and all of these things that I think come up whenever you talk about killing someone for a crime. I gave Burial Rites 5 out of 5 stars. It is just such a beautiful, moving book. It's not terribly long, and I do think it's an accessible way into literary fiction if you are looking to do that. Please don't miss it. Yes, it can be a challenging read, and this was my most intimidating book on my intimidating book tag. However, I am so glad I tackled it and just really seeped in how beautiful this was. I thought that this was just a great book, and I highly recommend it. Have you read Burial Rites? Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you loved it. If you didn't love it, I would love to know why. And let me know if you're thinking of reading it, or if you have any reservations about reading it, because I know that this was one of the ones where I was a little anxious to pick it up, but I am so glad I did. Thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!